When your children don't respect you, don't get angry. Do this instead. Very effective. There comes a time in life when the roles between parents and children begin to shift. You spend years raising them, guiding them, and sacrificing for them. But one day you realize something has changed. Maybe they ignore your advice. Maybe they dismiss your opinions. Maybe they talk down to you. Or worse, they make you feel like a burden. And it hurts. If your children have started treating you with less respect than you deserve, you might feel frustrated, even angry. You might want to remind them of everything you've done for them, of the years you spent putting them first. But here's the truth. Getting angry won't fix it. In fact, it often makes things worse. Instead, there's a much more effective way to regain their respect, without fighting, without arguments, and without resentment. Today, I'm going to share 6 powerful shifts you can make when your children don't respect you. These are simple changes in how you respond that can completely transform the way they see you. Some of these may surprise you, but if you stay until the end, you'll discover how to regain your place as a respected figure in their lives. Now, let's get started. Action 1. Stop chasing their approval. One of the biggest mistakes parents make, especially as they get older, is trying too hard to please their children. Maybe you've noticed yourself doing it. You go out of your way to accommodate them. You say yes when you want to say no. You put their needs ahead of your own, hoping that if you just do enough, they'll appreciate you more. But here's the painful truth. The more you chase their approval, the less they respect you. Respect isn't earned through self-sacrifice. It's earned through self-esteem. If you're always bending over backward, always giving in, always trying to keep the peace, what you're really teaching them is that your feelings come second. And once they start believing that, it's easy for them to take you for granted. I once knew a woman named Margaret, a strong, independent woman in her younger years. But as she grew older, she started letting her children make all the decisions. She rearranged her schedule around their needs, kept her opinions to herself, even ignored how they spoke down to her. "I just wanted to keep the family together," she told me once. But what happened? Her children stopped valuing her. They saw her as someone who would always adjust, always agree, always stay silent. She thought she was keeping the peace. But what she was really doing was losing her voice. If your children don't respect you, the first step isn't to demand it. It's to stop acting like you need it. Set boundaries. Say no when you need to. Speak your mind, even if they don't like what you have to say. Because the moment you start respecting yourself, they'll start seeing you differently. And in time, that respect will come back to you. Action 2. Lead by example, not argument. Respect isn't won through words. It's earned through presence. Through the way you carry yourself. Through how you respond when others test your patience. If you meet disrespect with anger, all you're doing is confirming what they already believe, that they have power over you. I knew a man named Frank, a retired professor who had spent his life leading a classroom with confidence. But at home, his grown children had started treating him like an afterthought. They ignored his advice, dismissed his concerns, and sometimes even laughed when he tried to correct them. First, he argued back, tried to prove he still deserved their respect. But the more he fought, the worse things got. Then one day, Frank made a change. Instead of arguing, he started listening. Really listening. He stopped chasing respect with words and instead carried himself like a man who already had it. He spoke calmly, with wisdom, without the need to win. And slowly, his children noticed. They saw a man who wasn't desperate for their approval, who didn't need to prove himself, who simply was a figure of quiet strength. If your children don't respect you, don't fight them for it. Show them what respect looks like by how you treat yourself. Keep your dignity. Speak with confidence. And most importantly, never lower yourself to their level. Because when you hold your ground with grace, they'll feel it. And in time, they'll follow your lead. Action 3. Withdraw your emotional dependence. One of the hardest lessons to learn as you grow older is this. You can't depend on your children for emotional fulfillment. You may love them deeply, and you may want them to love and respect you in return. But the moment they feel that you need them to feel valued, the power shifts. Here's the reality. People, yes, even your own children, respect those who are emotionally independent. When you rely on them for validation, affection, or attention, it puts pressure on them. And instead of feeling grateful, they start feeling burdened. I knew a woman named Helen, a kind-hearted mother who had given everything to her children. But as they grew older and busier, she found herself waiting by the phone, hoping they would call. When they didn't, she called them too often, reminding them how much she missed them, how she wished they would visit more. But instead of bringing them closer, pushed them away. Then one day, Helen made a change. She stopped waiting. She stopped calling first. Instead, she focused on herself, picked up new hobbies, went out with friends, took care of her own happiness. And something surprising happened. Her children started calling more. They started respecting her time. They saw her as someone with a full life of her own. The lesson is simple. The less you depend on your children to make you feel needed, the more they will value your presence. When you show them that you can stand strong on your own, they will respect you, not out of obligation, but because they admire the life you've built. Action 4. Set boundaries and enforce them. One of the biggest reasons children lose respect for their parents is because the parents allow it. If you let your children talk to you disrespectfully, dismiss your opinions, treat you like your time and feelings don't matter, they'll keep doing it. Not because they're bad people, but because people, especially family, will always treat you the way you allow them to. Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting off your children or creating conflict. It means calmly and firmly deciding what behavior you will and will not accept. And more importantly, sticking to it. If you're still here and finding value in these insights, comment number 2 below to let me know you're with me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you do. Turn on the bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful content to inspire and inform you. Now, let's move forward. Action 5. Rebuild your identity outside of parenthood. It's easy to lose yourself in the role of being a parent. But when your children grow up, that role changes. And if you're not careful, you might forget who you are outside of it. Your life is more than being someone's parent. It's time to rediscover who you are, your passions, your interests, your dreams. When you live a life that fulfills you beyond parenthood, your children will see it and respect you for it. Action 6. Embrace silence when necessary. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. When your children cross a line, when they test your patience, when they say something hurtful, you don't always have to respond. Silence can be powerful. Create space. It gives them time to think. And sometimes, it's the only way they'll hear you. Final thoughts. If your children don't respect you, don't demand it. Command it. Through your actions. Through your dignity. Through the life you build for yourself. Because when you respect yourself first, they will follow. And that is the real path to regaining their respect. If the story resonated with you, drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around. There's more coming. Real stories, messy ones, the kind most people are too afraid to say out loud. Until then, be careful with your heart, and be even more careful with someone else's. It means enforcing boundaries when they are crossed. I remember a man named Robert, a retired businessman who had spent his life running a company with discipline and confidence. But when it came to his adult children, he struggled. They interrupted him when he spoke, dismissed his concerns, even criticized the way he lived his life. At first, he tolerated it, told himself it wasn't worth the fight. But over time, Robert realized, every time he stayed silent, he was teaching them that their behavior was acceptable. So one day, he changed his approach. When his son interrupted him, he calmly said, "I'll continue speaking when you're ready to listen." When his daughter dismissed his opinion, he replied, "You don't have to agree with me, but I expect you to respect me." And when they pushed his limits, he made it clear, if they couldn't treat him with basic respect, he wouldn't be spending time with them. You know what happened? They started listening. At first, they resisted. But over time, they realized their father wasn't backing down. They saw that he valued himself enough to demand respect. And because of that, they started giving it to him. If your children don't respect you, it's time to ask yourself, are you allowing it? Because if you don't set boundaries, they won't set them for you. And if you don't stand up for yourself, no one else will. Action 5. Stop giving without appreciation. One of the quickest ways to lose respect is to keep giving to people who don't appreciate it. And as parents, we do this more often than we realize. We give our time, our energy, our support, even when it's not acknowledged, even when it's taken for granted. Here's the truth. When you give to someone who doesn't appreciate it, you don't build love. You don't build respect. You build expectation. They stop seeing your kindness as something valuable and start seeing it as something they're entitled to. And the moment you stop, they don't feel grateful. They feel inconvenienced. I knew a man named George, a father who had always been generous with his children. He helped them financially, dropped everything to assist them, even rearranged his life to accommodate their needs. But instead of gratitude, he was met with complaints. They didn't say thank you. They expected more. And the worst part? When he finally needed their help, they were too busy. Then one day, George made a change. He stopped overextending himself, stopped offering help before it was even asked. And most importantly, he started saying no when he needed to. At first, his children were frustrated. They didn't understand why he wasn't bending over backward anymore. But over time, something shifted. They started valuing his time, started appreciating his efforts, because suddenly, they realized his generosity wasn't unlimited. It was a gift, not a guarantee. If your children don't respect your time, effort, or kindness, take a step back. Ask yourself, are you giving more than you should? And if so, what would happen if you stopped? When you teach people that your generosity is conditional on respect, they will start treating it that way. Action 6. Build a life outside of them. One of the most powerful ways to regain your children's respect is to show them that your happiness doesn't revolve around them. As parents, it's natural to devote yourself to your children, to make them the center of your world. But as you get older, that dynamic shifts. And if you've spent your entire life prioritizing them, they may start seeing you as someone who has nothing else going on. People respect those who have their own purpose, their own interests, their own fulfillment. If your children see that you rely on them for entertainment, validation, or meaning, they might start feeling suffocated. Or worse, they might start seeing you as someone who has no life of their own. I knew a woman named Eleanor, a widow in her late 70s. After her husband passed, she poured everything into her children's lives, checked in constantly, gave advice they didn't ask for, expected them to fill the space her husband once did. But instead of drawing them closer, pushed them away. They visited less. Their calls became shorter, and Eleanor felt more alone than ever. Then she made a choice. She stopped making her children the center of her world. She joined a book club, started traveling with friends, volunteered at a local community center. And something incredible happened. Her children started reaching out more. They became curious about what she was doing, admired her independence, and respected her. If your children don't respect you, ask yourself, do they see you as someone with a full, meaningful life? Or do they see you as someone waiting around for their attention? Because when you show them that you are living, not just existing, they'll start seeing you in a completely different light. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, comment number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Your support helps us continue creating content to inform and inspire you. Final thoughts. Respect is not something you can demand from your children. It's something you inspire through how you carry yourself, through how you set boundaries, through how you live your life. If they've started treating you with less care, less consideration, or less respect. Don't waste your energy getting angry. Instead, shift your approach. White heavy check mark, stop chasing their approval. Because the less you need it, the more they'll give it. White heavy check mark, lead by example. Because your dignity speaks louder than your words. White heavy check mark, withdraw your emotional dependence. Because the more self-sufficient you are, the more they'll respect your presence. White heavy check mark, set boundaries. Because people will only treat you as well as you require them to. White heavy check mark, stop giving without appreciation. Because when generosity is taken for granted, it loses its value. White heavy check mark, build a life outside of them. Because when your happiness is self-sustained, they'll admire you for it. If this message resonated with you, drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around. There's more coming. Real stories, messy ones, the kind most people are too afraid to say out loud. Until then, be careful with your heart, and be even more careful with someone else's. When generosity is taken for granted, it loses its value. And most importantly, build a life outside of them. Because people, yes, even your own children, respect those who have their own purpose, their own joy, their own sense of fulfillment. When you prioritize your own happiness, when you cultivate a life that brings you meaning beyond your role as a parent, something incredible happens. Your children begin to see you differently, not as someone waiting by the phone, not as someone whose world revolves around them, but as someone who commands respect, simply by being who they are. They'll notice the quiet confidence in how you carry yourself. They'll see the strength in your boundaries. They'll feel the calm in your emotional independence. And over time, that respect will come back to you, not because you demanded it, not because you guilt them into giving it, but because you earned it. This is the shift that changes everything. When you stop chasing their approval, when you stop giving endlessly without appreciation, when you stop depending on them for validation, you teach them an important lesson. Respect is a reflection of how you treat yourself. And when you treat yourself with dignity and self-worth, they'll follow your lead. But here's the secret. This shift isn't just about regaining your children's respect. It's about reclaiming your own life. A life where you come first. A life where your happiness isn't tied to their approval. Where your sense of worth isn't measured by how often they call or visit. Where your days are filled with things that bring you joy. Hobbies, passions, friendships, adventures. And when they see you living fully, they'll want to be part of that life. They'll respect you, not because they have to, but because they genuinely admire the person you've become. Why this works? Children, no matter their age, take cues from their parents. When they see you thriving, they see strength. When they see you setting boundaries, they learn respect. When they see you standing firm in your values, they understand dignity. And when they see that you're happy without needing them to fill that space, they naturally gravitate back to you, not out of obligation, but because they want to. What happens when you reclaim your power? When you embrace this shift, you no longer feel like you're walking on eggshells, afraid to say no, afraid to set limits, afraid they'll pull away. Instead, you walk with confidence. You speak with clarity. You engage with them from a place of strength, not neediness. And here's the best part. The pressure lifts. Your relationship stops feeling like a burden. Conversations become lighter. Moments together feel more meaningful. Because now, you're no longer trying to hold on to them. You're simply enjoying them. And when they come back differently. They come back not as children who feel obligated to visit out of guilt, but as adults who value the relationship, who see you as an equal, who respect your time and presence. And that's the ultimate reward. A relationship built on mutual respect, not on guilt, not on obligation, but on genuine love and admiration. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. What's one thing you learned today? And more importantly, how do you plan to use it in your life? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your words matter. They inspire us. They keep us motivated. They remind us that these messages make a difference. Reading your comments is not just encouraging. It's what fuels us to keep creating content that informs and inspires. So don't hesitate. Share your thoughts. Let us know how this has impacted you. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, white heavy checkmark like this video. White heavy checkmark subscribe if you haven't already. White heavy checkmark turn on the bell so you never miss future videos. White heavy checkmark and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means the world to us. It allows us to continue creating content that empowers and uplifts people just like you. And trust me, there's more to come. What's next? We're not stopping here. We're diving deeper into real stories, messy ones, the kind most people are too afraid to say out loud. If you're ready for more, stick around, because we're going to keep exploring the truths that no one talks about until they need to. Until then, be careful with your heart, and be even more careful with someone else's. We'll see you in the next video.